The NBA 82-game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for all the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. I can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through to the finals, now's the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been the go-to spot for NBA player props, and that does not stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will they drop 30 points, 40, or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Lock in your bets. Let's make this playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great weekend. Kind of a bummer that our Game 7 ended up being a dud. I kind of had a suspicion that it would be just simply because as soon as Aaron Gordon was hurt, even if they got out of this series, there's very little chance for them to survive two more playoff rounds. And as I always say, like, you got to have belief if you're a basketball team to overcome great adversity. And it was always going to be difficult to beat Oklahoma City on the road. And Denver gave it a good, punch there to start. But when they started to lose control of the rope, they just let go, and Oklahoma City ends up blowing them out. One of their interesting defensive adjustments in this game, going to a lot of Alex Caruso on Nikola Jokic and just fronting the post that really turned the game around. We're going to break that game down briefly from the perspective of both teams, and then we'll talk about Oklahoma City looking forward, and then we'll talk about Denver looking forward. Then we'll take about 10, 15 minutes of mailbag questions before we call it a day. No playback today, just because it's a Sunday afternoon, but we'll be back with our usual playback after show, starting with Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals on Tuesday night. So you guys are going to want to go over to playback.tv/hoops tonight to get set up there for our usual after shows that'll be starting back up on Tuesday. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing great work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Make sure you guys follow us there. And last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the chat so that we can get to the mailbag at the tail end of this show. All right, let's talk some basketball. So the start of this game looked very much like the classic experience gap, right? Like the ESPN graphic that's on the screen shows just the number of Game 7s both teams have played in. And Denver's just been in so many of them. And I think the total number of combined Game 7 appearances for OKC was 3. And that was Lou Dort, Shai, and Isaiah Hartenstein, if I remember correctly. And like Isaiah Hartenstein, I think that was last year. And then if I'm not mistaken, I think the Dort Shai one, I think that might be the James Harden blocked 3 in Game 7 in the bubble, if I remember correctly. But that's the only Game 7 experience that group has had, right? And that abundantly was clear at the start of the game. The Nuggets looked like the far more comfortable and confident team. The Thunder offense looked super tight. Guys were missing layups. Guys were missing jumpers. Denver's in control, right? From there, I thought 3 distinct stretches flipped the game. Stretch number 1, in the later third of the first quarter, Alex Caruso and Russell Westbrook check into the game. Alex starts denying Nikola Jokic the catch at the high post, and just in general, using a really good 3/4 front / full front to basically shut off passing angles into Jokic in the post in the high post. From there, none of the Nuggets role players looked like they knew how to make a high post entry. Russell Westbrook had a couple of turnovers. He had a possession where he just said, screw it, I'm going to go to the rim, and he got blocked. Christian Brown ended up finally missing a 3, and suddenly that 21-10 lead was 26-21 going into the start of the second quarter. It just kind of felt like a different game. OKC kind of had some momentum coming out of the end of that first quarter. Then the second pivotal stretch, David Adelman makes the critical mistake of leaving Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray both off the floor at the same time in Game 7 at the start of the second quarter. The Thunder went on a 6-0 run literally in 62 seconds. A minute and 2 seconds. All of a sudden, it's 27-26. All of a sudden, the Thunder have a lead in a game that the Nuggets controlled for, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. I think it was actually 9 minutes. It was less than the total run from 21-10 to 27-26 took less than 5 minutes of game clock. Just completely flipped the game. From there, the Nuggets stabilize. Jamal Murray hits a little jumper, puts the Nuggets back within one. Mark Daigneault calls a timeout, puts Chet Holmgren back in. And over the final 3 minutes of the first half, the Thunder close it out on an 18-5 run. Kind of an extension of what we saw at the end of the first quarter. Alex Caruso, but also J-Dub during the stretch doing some great work, battling for position against Nikola Jokic, denials, poor post entries, forcing turnovers, run-out dunks, and it basically ended the game in a 3-minute stretch there. So if you look at the first half in general, for out of the 24 minutes, 2/3 of it, Denver looked completely in control. Methodical half-court basketball, getting and making better shots. But in these short bursts, spanning just 8 minutes of game clock, the Thunder just completely dominate the game, and Denver's never able to regain control from there. There's some reality to the difficulty of dealing with ball pressure guards. Any of you guys who've played basketball and are kind of a bigger player, you'll have some experience with this over the years where, like, a ball pressure guard will just get up in your business, and he's swiping at the ball and grabbing and clawing and doing all that stuff. And what you have to do is you've got to create space. And the only way to create space is to protect the ball, clear with your elbow, clear with your shoulder, use your hips, use pivot moves, trying to clear out space against a smaller player. And it becomes a very delicate balance because most guards just naturally get a form of bias from officials because they're smaller. And so they just get away with more contact. And if you swing that elbow just right, even though his face is like right here in your personal space, the ref's going to call that an offensive foul. And so I was talking about it on Twitter earlier today. It's like a form of gamesmanship in the same way that foul drawing guards like what Shai does or Jalen Brunson does or Austin Reeves does, in the same way that those guys grift their way to the foul line on offense, there are defensive players who grift extra possessions by doing that sort of thing. Ball pressure, ball pressure, ball pressure. And what they do is they train themselves as soon as they get any sort of contact above the shoulders, they just flop back and they're going to get a call. And it's just complicated dealing with ball pressure. And it is what makes this Thunder defense so incredibly difficult to deal with is you survive the Dort J-Dub phase, and here comes Cason Wallace and Alex Caruso. They're probably even better at it than the first two guys are. And so it's just wave after wave. Aaron Wiggins gets in on the action too. It's just wave after wave after wave of big physical guard that's going to get in your business and be aggressive and physical, and the refs aren't going to be able to call every foul, and they do some gamesmanship of their own, and it just is a overwhelming wave after wave of force on the defensive end that wears you down. And that's how Oklahoma City won the series. Ultimately, they won this series with their defense. Looking forward for OKC, I thought they showed a lot of growth throughout the series. Denver had them on the ropes 3 different times in games that they ended up winning, just because they stuck to their identity and trusted that it would eventually carry them across the finish line. And it literally did. It took longer in Game 4. It took longer in Game 5. But eventually they did wear down Denver's offense. Eventually they couldn't score the ball. Eventually their downhill force did break through the barrier that was Denver's defense. Alex Caruso won you a playoff series. I don't think you win this series without Alex Caruso. I thought that was a really interesting thing in retrospect, looking back at that trade. I hope Chicago's enjoying Josh Giddey. But Alex Caruso is a veteran role player who came in, the only rotation player on this team over the age of 26. And his ability to consistently knock down spot-up threes in this series, while also being a guy that not only was defending Jamal Murray extremely well at stretches, but was also doing a great job on Nikola Jokic for stretches. You could argue he was the best defender that Denver used on Nikola Jokic in this series. Just unbelievable output from a player that they brought in during the summer. Isaiah Hartenstein, by the way, too, the job that he did on Jokic guarding his strong hand, like the trades made this summer by Sam Presti to bring in Alex Caruso, the decision to sign Isaiah Hartenstein, they literally gave this team a championship ceiling that would have been cut off at the knees right here in the second round. They would not have beat the Denver Nuggets had they brought last year's team back. So shout out to Sam Presti for those moves. I thought that was a nice bounce back game from J-Dub. I thought he just showed more of a propensity to just attack the rim instead of settle for jump shots early in the clock. He did take a couple jumpers in the first half that he missed, but they were after he was aggressive downhill towards the basket. Just attack the rim and play defense, and good things will happen. That's a great way to get yourself out of a slump, is just play really hard and focus on the things that don't depend on variance. Looking at the Minnesota series, again, I'm not going to have a prediction until tomorrow. I'm working on it first thing in the morning. I'm going to watch a ton of film. We'll have a full series preview at some time, probably during the early afternoon tomorrow. But it's a very interesting series. Two elite defenses with elite rim protection, and both teams have a legit too big look. Two elite on-ball guards against two teams that have a ton of good on-ball defense options, which should make for a very interesting series in the sense that both Shai and J-Dub and Ant and Julius, everyone should be uncomfortable in this particular matchup. But there are three major differences between the two teams. The Wolves are bigger while the Thunder are faster. I think that's like a kind of, they're both very athletic, but in different ways. The Wolves, I think, are substantially more experienced. And Ant's secondary shot creator is a veteran forward in Julius Randle, while Shai's backup shot creator is a younger guard in J-Dub. And Julius has been a substantially more reliable offensive player. My initial gut feeling, and this might completely change tomorrow after I watch a bunch of tape, so I'm not saying this is my pick, but my initial just gut reaction looking at the series is I trust Minnesota's offense to be able to score more over the top in these ugly-ass games. These games are all going to be really low scoring. And I expect it to be the kind of series where it turns into, can Ant make tough shots? Can Julius make tough shots? Can Naz Reid make tough shots? Can Chet Holmgren, J-Dub, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? And I just trust Julius Randle and Julius Randle and Naz Reid just a little bit more than I trust Chet Holmgren and J-Dub right now. And so my initial gut reaction is to lean slightly towards Minnesota, but again, that might change after I watch the film more intently tomorrow and start putting together that series preview. But again, I think both series are more or less coin flips. Again, I picked Indy and I'm leaning Minnesota, but I think we've got an excellent conference final awaiting us between four pretty evenly matched teams, at least respectively in their matchups. And I'm hopeful that for the first time since 2022, we get a good conference final because we've had a couple of brutal ones in a row. Denver. They had their chances, man. Up 8 in game 4 in the fourth quarter, up 9 in game 5 in the fourth quarter. They'll be kicking themselves for a little while for this one. I think Jokic will be kicking himself for game 4 because that was the last game out of a 3-game stretch where he couldn't make a shot. And if he would have been able to make more shots, his team would have won that game. I think Jamal Murray will be kicking himself for game 5 because he was so good for the first 3 quarters and he just went cold in that fourth quarter. But overall, I was impressed by Denver's championship pedigree and their overall ability to make this into a very competitive series. I want to shout out Aaron Gordon. I couldn't believe he was going to play. And as he was running around, I couldn't believe he was playing. And there was a certain amount of they tried to keep him on Hartenstein a little bit more so he's less defending in action. He's doing a lot of switching off of every little screen, not really throwing a lot of effort in transition or in closeouts. But obviously he couldn't move. But I thought he was positive impact on a grade 2 hamstring strain. And it just is insane. And when I think about Aaron Gordon, obviously I'm a little biased because I'm a University of Arizona fan. But this last 3 years for him in the postseason, I think he's been one of the better, more reliable, more versatile role players that I've seen. And to me, he's just a champion and a legend and someone that I've got a great deal of respect for. And he's got a long career ahead of him. And I think that's a perfect springboard to this next conversation, which is I want to start this point of view from a very basic kind of like position that I hold, which is I do think, like without a doubt, that Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic is a championship core. I think those four guys can absolutely start at those respective four positions and win the championship. They just badly need to upgrade that Michael Porter Jr. slot. That was a problem throughout this postseason, whether it was them not being able to trust MPJ, not being able to trust Russ, not being able to trust Peyton Watson. They just didn't have a reliable fifth guy. Michael Porter Jr. is going to be a difficult player to trade, but he is the kind of player that I'd be looking to move this offseason for a defensive-minded wing. Because of Aaron Gordon's development as a shooter, Christian Brown, again, over the tail end of the series, got his jump shot figured out. Also, Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown are two examples of defensive-minded players that have become better shooters. I think those dudes will probably get with whatever defensive-minded wing you get and friendly bully him into becoming a better shooter. Like, I would just be looking for someone in that mold of the Herb Jones, Jaden McDaniels type of player. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get Jaden, but I would be looking for that type of big, rangy wing athlete that can basically fill in the baseline spacer role off of Jokic as a cutter now that Gordon and Brown can shoot the ball as well as they do. And that raises your defensive ceiling and your overall athleticism substantially, which I think would be an upgrade. And then the last thing I'll say about it, just Jamal's conditioning. I think he needs to come into camp ready to go and maximize himself to the point where he's a more reliably good player in these situations. Jamal was bad tonight, but he was fantastic in game 6, and he was really good in game 5 until he wasn't. And so I think there's a clear shot making ceiling there with him that he will reach more consistently if he just becomes the kind of player that maximizes what he can get out of his body over the course of a season. And so I think it's about maximizing what you have on board, making an upgrade to that 5th starter spot at the small forward position. I think there's a real opportunity there for Denver to pivot and not have to ditch their continuity. Like, I was talking to Colin today, and Colin's like, well, do you think they should trade Jamal Murray? No, I don't. To me, Jamal Murray's continuity with Jokic in the two-man game is of substantial value. And you could get a player who on paper is better than Jamal, but it's not as good within this particular team in this fit. And so I think you bet on continuity and you just upgrade that 5th starter spot, go from there. You've got enough young talent with, Jalen Pickett and Peyton Watson off the bench. Julian Strawther had his moments in this series. They've got their opportunity to get more talent out of their young players in the big picture. I think they just got to upgrade that 5th starter spot. All right, let's bring Jackson on and take some questions.
Let's do it. Just sort of sticking on this Denver point for a second. Do you think Denver's issues have more to do with the small forward position or a lack of depth?
So I think like there's a certain amount of depth that will come naturally through the development of their young players. Like, I don't think the issue is having Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther as your, even Russell Westbrook in this case, as your 6, 7, 8. It's just not having a 5. They just didn't have a 5. Like, I feel like if the Nuggets got reliable play out of Michael Porter Jr. in this series, they win. Like, I just think they do. So like, I think that is a more achievable goal, looking at it through the lens of one piece and then understanding like there's going to be year over year improvement with your young talent. Those guys are going to have their opportunities next year to get plenty of play time. It's just, you got to have 5 guys that you trust in a big spot.
Yeah, they definitely didn't have 5 guys they trusted in this series. That's for sure. Nope. That is for sure.
Do you agree with me that the top 4 though are good?
I do. I feel like the relationship and the continuity you're describing with Jamal and Jokic feels very of the Steph and Draymond conversation to me, where it's like, yeah, there might be a better player than Draymond Green to pair with Steph Curry. Yeah, there might be a better player to pair with Jokic and Jamal Murray, but the chemistry they have on the court takes a long, long time to develop. And most teams aren't winning a championship without some level of the sum is greater than the parts. Even when those parts are amazing, you need the sum to be greater. And that's where that chemistry, I think, is really, really, really valuable.
That's a great point. Like we talk about this literally all the time. Your value in a vacuum doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The only value that matters is your value on that basketball team. And the Draymond Steph partnership supersedes any potential partnership of Steph with another big that doesn't have that like seamless synergy that you get out of those two. Like even with Anthony Davis, like if you had to like, cause I remember we had that Warriors fan who was like, well, what if we can get AD? Like if let's say you had to use Draymond as salary filler in the AD trade. There's obviously massive upside with AD, but one of the downsides would be AD is not as good of a processor and short role player as Draymond is. And so even though AD's greatness would supersede, and I'm sure the Warriors would be better with AD because he's the type of superstar player. But the point is it's more complicated. It's not just as simple as attaching an in a vacuum talent. Like Steph, because he brings two to the ball, 25 feet from the basket, processing is like one of the most valuable skills for a player playing alongside of him. And that's one of the things that Draymond brings.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, and there's obviously exceptions to that. Like if you put Giannis with Steph Curry, yes, that's just enough of a talent gap where it's worth it. And if you put Steph Curry with Nikola Jokic, it's enough of a talent gap to replace Jamal Murray, but you're not, it's going to be challenging to have enough of a talent gap to replace that chemistry that we're sort of describing, I think.
Exactly.
Next question. Jason, what kind of defense do you think Mini will play against OKC? Will they throw a lot of zone out there? OKC did have some trouble with the zone earlier in the series before they sort of figured it out a little bit.
I think we'll see some zone, but I think this is going to be a man-to-man series for both teams. I think it's going to be a ball pressure, load up the strong side, force you to move the ball and shoot against a hard closeout type of game. I think we could see extended ugly stretches from both Shai and Ant in this series. Like both of these defenses are perfectly designed to deal with each other. Like it's a real problem for both teams. And the like for as fast as OKC is, they're going to be dealing with Minnesota's length, and there's a certain amount of like Shai's an over the top jump shooter who's going to be shooting against length, but like at the same time, Ant's superpower is his quickness and his ability to beat people off the dribble with speed, and there's just a lot of athletes that are going to be standing right in his way throughout this entire series, and so I think it's going to be very much a tough shot making for the stars kind of series and a catch and shoot three for mediocre role players type of series out of man-to-man sequences. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we had multiple games in this series where neither team gets to 100.
Yeah, it does feel like both teams have unique defensive options to throw against the other team's best player. Being able to have Dort, Caruso, Cason Wallace to throw at Anthony Edwards, and to have Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels to throw at Shai and
Nikhil's a great one.
Nikhil, they got both teams have a lot of long athletic defenders. Dante is super quick. Yeah, they can throw, and they all have different sort of strengths and types of defenders. So they could mix up the looks, which I think is valuable as well. Next question? How would you rank the last four teams in terms of championship odds?
This is a really good question. I think Oklahoma City should be a substantial favorite over both Indiana and New York. Minnesota, I would make a smaller favorite over Indiana and New York, but I think I'd make them favored. But I think that Minnesota OKC could go either way, if that makes sense. So like strictly speaking, the matchups, I view Minnesota OKC as a coin flip, but going forward into the finals, I view Minnesota as more susceptible to a loss to Indiana or New York than I view OKC. I think OKC would dispatch of the Knicks and the Pacers pretty quickly. It's just a nightmare matchup for both of them to have to deal with all that guard speed on the ball. So with that being the case, I would rank the Thunder, small gap, Timberwolves, big gap, Pacers, small gap, Knicks is how I'll put it.
I think I agree. And DraftKings does not. DraftKings has, they agree with part of it. They have OKC as the heavy favorite, minus 165. And then I think probably just because you can only get one of the two Western Conference teams in the finals, that from an odds perspective, they have an Eastern Conference team next, the Knicks at plus 450.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the Timberwolves are plus 550 and the Pacers are plus 700.
See, you know what's interesting about that, though, is I think I think it's substantially more likely that Minnesota sneaks through OKC and beats who comes out of the East than either of the East teams beating OKC.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, like it's just, can you imagine Halliburton and Brunson and Nemhard like just dealing with the incessant wave of Kason Wallace and Alex Caruso and Lou
Yeah.
Dort, and yeah, like it just, I think it would just be too much for them. Like I view the Western Conference Finals as basically the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And this is not to take shots at Tyrese Halliburton or Jalen Brunson because those guys deal with a lot of good athletic defenders all the time. But you saw it for stretches in game 5 of the Knicks Celtics series where when Jaylen Brown is like, I'm going to turn into a defensive like demon right now. That caused some problems for Jalen Brunson. And not, I mean, they obviously won the series. It's not anything like that. But if you got 3 different guys you are always going to be fresh-ish to throw at Jalen Brunson or Tyrese Halliburton, it would be a challenge, I think, against OKC.
The a simple stat to kind of break this down: Denver in the regular season with Nikola Jokic on the floor had a 126 offensive rating. Okay. For Denver versus OKC in this round, they had a 104 offensive rating with Jokic on the floor. So OKC was literally able to cut Denver's regular season offense production by 22 points per 100 possessions. That's crazy. Like
That's crazy.
They are, like I saw our friend and colleague Carson Breber talking about them as an all-time great defense, and I'm always hesitant to throw that phrase out until we like get there. But like, if they're gonna get there, this is what it would look like. Like they're certainly in the process. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like watching Jokic in 2020 and 2021, where you're like, this guy might be the best.
No,
this might
sure.
be the best player. And like this defense from OKC looks like one of those special defenses in NBA history that can really cause problems for teams. And the reason why Denver had extended stretches of success against OKC is they had this big mammoth human that could just run. Like some of Jokic's drop step buckets through double teams today. Did you see some of those today?
Yeah.
Where he's just like, he just spins into traffic and just goes through like 3 dudes and lays it up. The Knicks and the Pacers just don't have that option against this Thunder team. And I think they'd be in some real trouble.
Yeah, it's sort of like we talked a lot about Anthony Edwards sort of being this like king slayer. He's taken out all these, all-time greats on his way on this playoff run. If the Thunder end up winning the title, the first round is whatever. But being able to say we put the clamps on Jokic, we put the clamps on a Timberwolves team that just kind of shredded a great not shredded, but like had a lot of success against a good, very, very good Warriors defense. And then we put the clamps on Jalen Brunson or Tyrese Halliburton's whirlwind Pacers. Like that would be a pretty impressive defensive finals run, I think.
I agree. And I think you're hitting on another interesting thing, which is that I think Golden State was a really good tune-up for Minnesota to prepare for OKC.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Minnesota had gone straight from the Lakers to OKC? Like I would have probably picked OKC in a heartbeat. But getting that Golden State matchup is like, here's a real fast, smart defense that'll throw you for a loop. The difference is you'll be facing real rim protection in this round.
Yeah. All right, let's do one more sort of kind of abstract, crazy question, and then we can wrap up for the day. Love the show. What do you think of this trade? This is a blockbuster.
A doozy?
A doozy. The LA Lakers get Jarrett Allen, DeAndre Hunter, Isaac Okoro, and Dean Wade. And Cleveland gets LeBron James.
Okay, read me the names one more time. Jarrett Allen,
DeAndre
Isaac
Hunter,
Okoro,
Hunter, and Dean Wade. And apparently this does work for the money, according to the commenter.
Okay, let me conceptualize this for just a second. So in this universe, the Cavs would then run out Garland and Mitchell. And with Strus at the 3, with LeBron and Mobley.
Yep.
And they would lose the depth of DeAndre Hunter and Dean Wade.
Yeah.
And the Lakers would get, so it would be Austin, Okoro would be there too, I suppose.
Well, it's Luka, Austin, and DeAndre Hunter, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Luka, Austin, and DeAndre Hunter so it'd be Hunter and Rui would be
Hunter and Rui, and then Jarrett Allen. Yeah, exactly.
And then Allen at the center. And then oh, man.
I mean, it's not the worst. Like
it's an interesting
stay competitive,
idea.
but not punt on anything long term. You're like Hunter, Allen are still like in their rising into their prime, if not in their prime. They're not old by any means.
They're also, yeah, to your point, they're also players that like specifically struggled in the postseason, and
Right.
that Cleveland fans are probably like, I'll drive you to the airport anyway.
Right. It's sort of like both teams being like, damn, I don't really want to trade these guys. I never said I wanted to trade these guys, but if you're asking for them, I'll listen to a phone call.
So, so Cleveland basically gets to use LeBron as like a 1 year rental slash, they can drop his money off the books
Right.
eventually,
Cause they're
maybe
like,
convince.
they might have to do a total vibe shift if they run it back and lose again in the second round, for example,
Yeah.
next year.
And I think we came out of that series looking pretty clearly like, yeah, Mitchell and Mobley are their two guys.
Right.
Garland's a big question mark still. Man, that's a really interesting trade. That's something that I like if LeBron was dead serious about being willing to go back to Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be an interesting trade to explore and look at some different machinations in the sense that like yeah, the one other thing though is I wonder if Cleveland's going to look to potentially trade Garland at some point.
Yeah, they
If
might.
like how many times are they going to is Garland going to be basically useless in the postseason before they look to go a different direction there? But that could be an entirely separate deal. This is interesting. I'm not going to say that I would do it because I think the Lakers. Here's my issue if I'm the Lakers. DeAndre Hunter and Rui are both redundant. They're big forwards that struggle to defend on the perimeter, that are good catch and shoot players that can put the ball on the floor and attack a closeout, that can attack a mismatch. But they're both better at four than they are at the three, in my opinion. Jared Allen is not quite the vertical spacer that Luka typically likes to play with, but he is a very good like a short range spacer, meaning like floaters and push shots and stuff like that. He's a switchable big that I think, which I think obviously JJ Redick would like, and Isaac Okoro is a real athleticism upgrade. But after all of them just struggled in the postseason, I think you'd have a hard time giving up LeBron for him. It's an interesting idea, though. I'm not going to say I would do it or not, but that is an interesting idea. And like if LeBron decides that he wants to go back to Cleveland, there are certainly some avenues there to make that into an interesting trade. Do you have any big picture thought on it?
I mean, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but
Yeah,
I do feel like it kind of it's both teams are in a sort of we don't feel like we have the roster clearly to be contenders. There has to be some kind of shakeup. It feels like for both teams, but it's hard to part ways with any of the guys that you would need to make a trade. Like if you're a
exactly.
Cavaliers fan, I think it's tough to be like run it back, just exact same roster, run it back. But also like who do we really feel confident about trading?
The Jared Allen piece is the complicated one to me because you trade him, you instantly become a dramatically worse regular season team.
Yeah.
But he's gotten his ass kicked in the postseason multiple times in the last couple years.
Mm-hmm.
So like Mitchell Robinson ate him alive a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He got demolished by Miles Turner in this round. Like it's just really hard to sell your fan base on the idea like, hey, you guys, did you like that when we won 64 games? Well, without Jarrett, we're going to get 51, 52 wins. How does that sound to you guys? You know,
Right.
but then the way because like, especially with LeBron, like LeBron's not going to be some super impactful regular season player, but I would argue that Garland, Mitchell, Strus, LeBron, and Mobley have a much better chance to win in the postseason
Mm-hmm.
than that version does. And so that it's definitely worth exploring. All right, guys, that's all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. As I said, we will be going tomorrow early afternoon-ish with our series preview on the Timberwolves and the Thunder. Very much looking forward to digging into that tomorrow. No playback today, but we'll get back to our normal playback after shows on Tuesday. Again, that's playback.tv/hoops tonight for you guys to get set up there. Again, we appreciate you guys for rocking with us, and we'll see you tomorrow.